The world of Indel is flowing with darkness and the arcane, with one bright moon shining to bring her light to the darkest nights. There are also monstrosities that lie deep within the ocean, that home eldritch horrors, only spoken of in legend. Above its great waves lies mankind's many territories, on large but few continents that house millions of small islands, islands of which most people have not seen other than the ones they are born on, thanks to the Lasian Navy forces, hailing from the largest continent, Ethelas, home to the industrial city Hull. Those without clearance from the government could not sail freely across islands. Thankfully, those in search of glory and freedom set off against the law, against the world, become pirates. One of the greatest pirate crews, the Dawn Pirates, had set out on the unknown waters to reach their freedom. They ended up achieving greatness in defeating the corrupted naval forces, slaying eldritch monsters beyond comprehension, encountered the will of gods, and destroyed an ancient weapon built to invoke divinity. Not only were the tyrants of the Navy defeated, but the crew reached the fabled edge of the world, sailing off into the horizon, never to be seen again. Some say they found a gateway to the gods and became the Fated. Some say they simply plummeted to their demise. However, some voices carry an idea that they gave their lives to heal the world and brought upon what is known today as Ed Emeron, or the Unification. This event was felt around the world, where the newly discovered edge of the world had become whole for the first time in recorded history. This was almost 20 years ago, bringing not only a new horizon to lands, but also grave new threats. With a whole new world to explore, the old pirate crews have set off into the distance to search for new lands. However, on the same hand, it seems like some part of the new world has seeped into the known Indel, leading to an odd corruption taking the world by storm. In the wake of this, pirates now run rampant through the seas, almost unregulated, burning towns, killing citizens, and plundering wealth. What was once seen as a force of greater good against the Navy, now only viewed as treacherous and inhumane. Was the Navy right to control humanity, to protect us from ourselves? Either way, this chaotic world is in need of heroes, now more than ever. So, where does our story start? On Zora Port, an island towards the west of the world in the Durian Ocean, there lies a tavern. In the Bellows Tavern, we meet our crew, Bobbert, an old goblin artificer that is an ex-Navy man, living his life on the island, working now as a shipwright, simply here at the tavern to have a few drinks and look for some work to earn extra gold. Yeshua, a Harangon monk who left his home life on the farm and temple to try and find Elise Reinhardt, a red-headed ex-sailor with a metal arm and scars from previous journeys, to question her about what she knows of the corruption. Ora Silvertongue, a half-tiefling swashbuckler, here to meet with the owner Tranton in hopes of getting her a ship to find her previous crew, who she had lost in a furious battle with a kraken. Lastly, Rosalie Whispermouse, a paladin that follows the moon goddess Helena, here to meet with Tranton as well, for a way out of the Durian Ocean. All was quiet in the tavern until a commotion was heard just outside. Pirates were raiding the port. They popped into the tavern and kidnapped Nin, Tranton's wife, and our adventurers followed closely behind in order to rescue her. After fighting off the pirates' advances and rescuing Nin, Tranton offered to fix up one of the sunken pirate ships for Ora to commandeer as a thank you for saving her, and suggested that the rest of the party would join Ora on her ship. The ship was fixed up by Bobbert and his shipwright colleagues in the mill in about 2 days, and within those 2 days they met Celia, a little goblin girl working at the mill, who Ora invited on their ship as well, seeing a spark of fire in her soul, one that longed for adventure. Our crew sailed off in the morning, sailing towards an island called Alphalore, when their ship was attacked by a Naga, a very warm welcome from these violent seas. Rosalie dealt a final blow, killing the Naga, and somehow disappeared without a trace, one of the early signs that her magic was on the fritz. On Althalor, Celia and Elise stayed on the ship, while the rest of the crew ventured onwards to the island. The party city was a lot quieter than what was to be expected, except for a single concert hall. In the concert hall, a grey dragonborn named Burling was playing. Granted, it was not very well, making a spectacle of himself, calling themselves the King, as he pulled a dulcimer out of a raising platform. A hyena humanoid creature emerged from the crowd named Rhine. He yelled that the instrument did not belong to Burling, and that he was the false king, and in response, the guards were sent out to capture him. The crew decided to help Rhine get away from the guards, and did so in a very calm, subtle way, by setting the curtains on the stage on fire, and followed Rhine out of the building to hide in the Red Mist district. There they met Lady Hayes, a sort of adopted mother of Rhine, who told the crew about the true owner of the dulcimer, the King, who went missing after entering the Last Chance casino. The owner of the casino was Deems Silver Eye, who was the captain of the Dragon Alliance, who had found a silver eye that made him go mad with power. Our seaworthy sailors managed to get the blueprints for the casino, and created a plan to have Aura and Rhine go into the casino to cause a distraction, while Bobbert, Yeshua, and Rosalie snuck around the back to an old blocked-up entrance. During the very loud performance from the pair, the trio blasted through the wooden door, and they entered down into the dungeon, seeing people that were essentially husks of who they once were. After briefly questioning and terrorizing 2 guards in the dungeon, they found keys to start opening the cells. Rosalie was compelled to try and help these individuals. One of these people, in particular, was almost calling to her. She reached out and touched the man's shoulder, and a shadowy presence appeared in his veins, transferring to Rosalie, and shortly dissipated into her, not taking hold of her. Who was the man that she freed from his trance? It was the King, and the rest of the group decided to go up to the casino floor to rejoin Aura and Rhine. Their distraction drew a lot of attention, all right, gaining the eyes of Burling, who was jealous of the attention from the performance, and also from Deems. The crew managed to kill Burling in the fashion similar to shooting a clay pigeon, and Rosalie managed to make a deal with Deems to try and save the life of the King. She agreed to play one of Deems's last chance dance games, the one that turned those who were in the dungeons into husks after they lost. It seemed that she, like many others, met the same fate, and her soul was taken into his silver eye. However, unlike the husks, she was able to traverse the mirror plane of darkness. It was like the casino she was just in, yet eerily different. She felt a sense of emptiness, as if the darkness was fully consuming her soul. However, she could see a bright light in the air above her through the winding walls of the shadowy building. Feeling compelled to follow this light, it led her back to her own body in the actual world. Once back in battle, and Deems was dead, she walked over to try and collect the eye, and his hand grabbed her arm. Deems was not dead. He shifted and turned into a silver dragon thanks to the eye. The crew and their new friends managed to kill Deems and destroy the eye, freeing the souls that were once trapped inside, restoring the husks back to their previous selves. This caused the island to immediately start celebrating their liberation, and for the return of their beloved bard, the King. The crew joined in the celebrations, and the next day left for the next island, Zenith, with their new member, Rhine. Rosalie took this time to try and teach Celia combat, and Bobbert went to the crow's nest and managed to spot a naval ship heading in their direction. Bobbert immediately informed Aura, and the crew bore witness to this large navy brigantine, flying sails of the Legion armies, stopping their smaller ship dead in its tracks through an unknown arcane means. The crew met Captain Griffall, a Goliath captaining the Fallen Sun, who informed them of the updated Navy procedures of needing a license to sail under the Navy supervision. Aura managed to smooth-talk her way into getting them a boating license under the guise that they were a merchant ship, as well as sharing the events of Althalor. Rosalie took the license and hid behind Aura, especially after seeing someone she recognized on the ship, her sister. As the ship began to move again, they parted ways. Rosalie hid in the captain's quarters until her mind was calmed down. Once on Zenith, Aura insisted that the rest go explore the island, while she and Elise stayed on the ship. Based off the signs and paths, there were 2 towns on this island, Dugar and one whose name was unknown. Choosing the named city, they found that it was essentially dead during the nighttime, and that even the tavern was practically empty, except for one bartender, who informed them that goblins were seen as a threat in the town, and that Bobbert and Celia should probably leave before the rest of the town saw them. The 2 goblins left to the sister village to find out more on what they were dealing with, while Yeshua and Rosalie stayed in Dugar to ask the villagers in the morning. Once the sun had risen, the 2 in Dugar found out that the island had followers of Talos, the god of the sun and protection, and heard them drone on and on about how he will protect the island. As for the goblin team, they found out that the goblins were chased out of their mountain from an unknown threat, and their leader Bivin was still in the mountain. After the duos met back up, they headed towards the mountain for the goblin mines. Inside, not only did they find Bivin, they also found a goat-headed chimera with dark magic flowing within it. After it was slain, Bivin shared that this was one from a herd that had taken over the mountain. Rosa suggested going to the Temple of Talos with the goblin leader and their friends to explain that the goblins are also victims of this threat from the mountain. The head priest, Zorn, listened to the concerns and prepared to do a ritual later that day to try and contain the threat. The crew left to go back to the ship to inform Aura and Elise, and to rest. Unfortunately, that rest was cut short when a shark and goat-headed chimera attacked their boat. After it was slain, the crew realized a little golden carrot necklace Yeshua had was warding off the black ooze that was bleeding out from the dead chimera. The carrot was blessed by the god Wist, the god of nature and life. With this newfound knowledge, the crew rushed into town that was under attack by chimeras and left to join Zorn at the base of the mountain. He opened a path down into the den of the chimeras. It was covered in the same black ooze that bled out of the creatures when they died, and the golden carrot kept it at bay. The crew came face to face with the Alpha, one with a goat, a lion, and a wolf head, trying to tempt them into joining the corrupted ooze and lose themselves into chaos. The crew refused and slayed the Alpha that caused a chain reaction of chimeras dying all over the island. The crew headed to the temple to check on Zorn, who was exhausted from using so much of his power to keep the creatures at bay and opening the mountain for the crew. Not only did he lose his energy, he had lost all of his power as well, the divine energy that seemed to be blessed on him by Talos. Now a broken, hopeless man, he invited the crew to stay in the temple as thank you for their help. Only Aura left back to the ship. Rosalie asked for some books to learn more about the methods that Zorn used to keep the black ooze at bay, hoping to gain more insight to the magic she wields, and read more on the different runes that have been created, each with a different purpose, with Celia's help. Rosalie also read a book that was written by one Jonathan Baranth, who was remarked as the man who led an entire army against the gods, and was stopped by the Dawn Pirates at the edge of the world. Chillingly, the book was titled Gods and How to Kill Them, with depictions of runes that is supposedly strong enough to kill a god. Frightened by this, Rosalie questioned Zorn in the morning as to how he came to get this and why he had it. Also in the morning, Aura, on her journey back to the temple, recognized the Navy soldiers making their way into town and raced to the temple to question Zorn as to why the Navy was there. Once in the temple, Aura attempted to lock the door, and Zorn attempted to trap Rosalie using a rune. Both failed in their tasks, with Zorn getting a close look at Rosalie's dagger, and Aura being pushed down from the force of the door's opening. The crew opted to jump out of the already broken windows from the Chimera battle, and were greeted by soldiers surrounding the building. Not only that, Rosalie was greeted by another familiar face, Laura Whispermouse, her mother. Her mother attempted to start a rune, one that she recognized as the Death Rune. Luckily, the crew escaped being trapped. Well, all except for one. Racing back to the shore with a now unconscious Celia on Yeshua's back, Aura threw bombs to break the Navy brigs, Then they made their way back to their own ship. Unfortunately, their ship was found by the Navy and was now in flames on the ocean. Their solemn feelings had to wait, however, as a new challenger approached from the shadows. Fisher, known as the Pirate Hunter, was brought along with Laura and the Navy. The crew managed to kill him, but more Navy men came to the beach, with Laura and Captain Griffall of the 34th Regiment followed closely behind. Laura held up a crystal overhead that had Celia's soul, and made it known that if the crystal was lost or broken, so too would Celia's soul. She ensured Celia's safety if Rosalie returned home with her, for more testing to be done. Aura chose to hold Rosalie at gunpoint to try and squeeze more information out of Laura and make her turn over Celia. Rosa, now even more scared, confused, and feeling a little betrayed, pushed Aura off to get her to stop and walked over to her mother, seeing this as the only option to ensure Celia's safety and the crew's safety from the Navy, Laura, and herself. The crew was left on the shores of Zenith with their ship ablaze and belongings mainly lost, choosing to dive and climb in to save what they could. Rosalie, on the other hand, was now on a Navy ship, locked behind a cell door, with Celia resting on the bed, returning home to Mienli. After retrieving certain belongings, the crew made their way to the Goblin City for a place to stay. Bobbert gathered metal in order to make more bullets, while Elise shared that she used to be a captain, but not just any captain. The captain of the Dawn Pirates. Bivin came over to the house that they were staying in to show them blueprints for a new ship for them, and offered to help them build it, if they would help him gather supplies. More specifically, an iridian crystal to power it. The crew followed him into the mountain and traversed the tunnels and found the crystal. Unfortunately, the cart that they had to help them carry the crystal out wasn't entirely the quietest. This alerted cloakers that were living in the area of the cave, and they attacked them as they collected the crystal. The sheer power of the crystal and the collection caused the cave to shake and start a cave-in. The crew narrowly escaped with their now collected crystal. Now, all that is left to see is what will happen to our crew. Will the new ship be enough to get them to Mienli and collect Rosalie and Celia? Is Celia even still alive? Can she be restored? Only time will tell. Until next time on Seaworthy.